Have you considered writing your own personal curriculum? I know that's a trend these days, and I am so excited that people are in love with learning and they just want to learn more and more things. And that's one of the things that I want to talk to you about is a little bit about some things to consider as you are planning your own curriculum. So, stay with me. Hi, everyone. This is Crystal from A Crystal Clear Life, where we focus on planning, organizing, and living a more simplified life. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about curriculum design. I am a retired educator. I have over 35 years experience in teaching everything from preschool all the way up through senior citizens. So I have taught the gamut over the years. And one of the things that I have always enjoyed about the whole teaching process is the planning part and the development of the curriculum and the themes and that kind of thing. Anybody who knows me will tell you that I am not somebody who gets a textbook and follows that textbook to the letter. I can't do that. I have never been given a lesson plan that was developed by somebody else and followed it to a T. So I have always enjoyed creating my own lesson plans and unit designs. And with this whole process of personal curriculums that is out and about in the world today, that's very exciting to me. I don't want to take you through an in-depth, but I want to give you some tips on things to think about when you are creating your own personal curriculum. And I'll give you a couple of examples to help explain some things. Okay? All right. Well, if that sounds interesting, please go ahead, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe if you have not already. Share this with anybody who is enjoying learning and wanting to create their own curriculum. And with all that out of the way, let's get into it. Let's get to the fun part. Let's get to planning. All right, well, you can see here on my screen, I have a page up for you called Unit Theme Planning. And again, I am working in Microsoft's OneNote. That is my life management tool. It has been a tool that I have used since it first came out in, I don't know, 2010, something like that. Long time ago, long time ago. And I used it a lot for school when I was homeschooling my daughter. So there's lots of education stuff scattered throughout my OneNote things, but I did grab this page and pull it into my current year because I wanted to talk to you about it. When I had the opportunity to have a group of students that I could work with and we could learn whatever we wanted, I would sit the kids down and say, tell me some things that you're interested in learning about. And I would get everything from cats to ice cream to popcorn to U.S. history to how flags were created. I mean, just kids come up with the most interesting things to think about. I had one time I had a student say, I want to learn about what a black hole is and why they're so important. So it's amazing to me how kids hear things out in the world and then they really want to learn about them. Okay. So what I would do is I would take one of those themes, and then this was kind of the framework that I would use because my personal philosophy on learning is that, first of all, you have to start with something that you're interested in. Okay, so that's why I would ask the children. Second, you have to be able to connect that new learning to something that you already know. Okay, so it's like having a coat rack, right by your front door. And you walk in and you put your coat on that coat rack and you put your umbrella on that coat rack and they stay there because there's something for that coat and that umbrella to hang on to. Okay, if you didn't have that coat rack, which in this case is your prior knowledge or something that you already know, and you just walked in and put your coat down, it would fall on the floor and become a jumbled mess and get lost. Your learning is the same way. You need to have something to hang on to, something to connect it to, so that it stays in your brain. Okay? All right, so the other thing after that, having it something to connect it to, I was always one who was big on projects, okay? Applying what you have learned in some sort of project. So the kids would always have a project that they would have to do at the end of our unit. And it was a way that I could assess what they had learned when they were able to integrate all of that information together. And sometimes I would even take it a little step farther and I would make them teach someone else that information. Okay. For example, at the end of every school year for our homeschool group that we did here in my house, which was called Love of Learning, um, we did a museum. So we turned my entire house into a museum, and every room had a focus about different units that we had learned about that year. And the children would go through and they would present different projects that they had done to the adults who were visiting the museum. So the kids got to be the docent, and the adults got to be the learners in that case, and the students were able to teach the adults a little bit about what they had learned throughout the year. It was wonderful. They loved it. The kids loved it. The parents loved it. Everybody loved it. It was a lot of fun. But that was a great way to extend that learning a little bit farther. If you know something well enough to teach it to other people in a clear way, then you have mastered that subject. Okay? All right. So let's take a look at this form because, as you can tell, I'm very excited about curriculum development, and I could go on and on and on, but I'm supposed to be focusing myself on just giving you some tips for how you could plan out your curriculum, okay? All right, so let's take a look at this form. It's called the theme planning form, and I have had this form, this paper form, for 20 years or more, okay? And really, what it starts with is you put your theme here in the middle, okay? And then whatever month you're going to work on that theme and whatever grade level it happens to be, okay? Then from there, you kind of take that theme and you expand on it, okay? So you start thinking about, well, what are some books or some reading materials that the students could look at related to this theme? What are the key vocabulary words that I want them to learn about from this theme? What could they write about? Because that's another way of processing that information. What could they write about? Could they write a letter? Could they write a newspaper article? Could they write a blog post? Could they write an information pamphlet? Could they create a PowerPoint? What could they write about this theme to share what they have learned? Okay. Speaking, how could they present that project? Okay. Maybe they could create a podcast. Maybe they could interview somebody. Maybe they could make a video. There's all kinds of different ways that you can speak about what you have learned about. And then listening and viewing. Are there any things from other experts that I might want them to listen to, or YouTube videos to view, or that kind of thing? Okay. So now, if you're going to apply this to yourself, and you're developing your own curriculum, this would be the place where you would jot down those sources for things that you might want to read, books that you might want to read, fiction, nonfiction, whatever it happens to be. A place for some vocabulary that you might have heard related to a subject, but you don't really know exactly what it is. And I will tell you right now that when you're learning a new subject, 80% of the learning is the vocabulary, and then 20% is applying that vocabulary to what you're actually trying to do, okay? And so think about, what could you write? Keeping a journal, doing a blog post, all of those kinds of things. Who might you share this with? Do you have a crafting group that you want to share the newest idea that you've learned? Those kinds of things, and on, okay? So this is all kind of the English language reading, writing, speaking, and listening component to learning. Let's jump over to the other side of the brain in some cases, and let's look at math and see how we could incorporate some math learning into whatever theme it happens to be that you're looking at, okay? Now, some of you may say, math is quite a stretch, Crystal. I don't really understand how you would get math into every subject. Well, sometimes the math might be a timeline Okay, if you're studying something in history, you might be creating a timeline of those different units of where the events happened, okay? And that is a math component, all right? Also think about how you could incorporate some science into that particular unit. And again, you may think that's a stretch, and how am I going to get science in there? If I'm studying about World War II, how am I going to get science in there? Well, let me tell you, the ballistics and the artillery that was used during World War II was huge in the way that it was invented and created and used, and that could be your science component, okay? All right, so let's move on now to social studies. Again, history, civics, the stories behind, what you are actually creating. Okay, and then finally the arts. Let's not forget the arts. There has to be a way that you can creatively express something that you are learning. Maybe you want to make a watercolor painting. Maybe you want to put together a collage to represent all of the things that you have learned. Maybe you want to create a song or write a poem about what you have learned about, okay? So there's all different ways to incorporate the arts. All right. This is the form, and I've talked a little bit about that. The form right now is actually a graphic. I created this form in Microsoft Word years and years and years ago. And so all I have done here is saved it as a picture. You can tell it's a picture by all of these dashed and dotted lines. If I wanted to, I could set this picture as a background. And now you see those lines have gone away. I could then go in here and I could start writing. Let's say we wanted to start filling this in. Now I can't actually write in these blocks, but I could create a text box. Let's say we wanted to read Charlotte's Web, okay? And let's put that text box over here under reading. That's going to be our primary focus for this unit. Okay, maybe we're learning about farm life or something like that. We might also want to look at, I have a great annotated version of Charlotte's Web. That might be cool. It might also be interesting to look at a biography of E.B. White. Okay, that kind of thing. And then you can say, all right, well, let's look at the math of spiderweb designs, because as you start studying spiders, you'll know that there are all different kinds of spiderweb designs, and do they follow any of the Fibonacci sequences or anything like that? What is the mathematical formulas for how spider webs are created and that kind of thing, okay? So you can go on and start planning this way if you wanted to use some kind of form like that. But you know me in OneNote. For me, it's easier to create a table. So let me show you the table that I created that basically is this same idea. All right, so here's a very simplistic table. I put the space at the top for whatever the theme is, a section for reading, and a cell that I can fill in math, vocabulary, science, speaking, social studies, listening, viewing, and the arts, okay? If you wanted to do this on paper, you could simply take a piece of paper, draw it, and cut it in half, and make your own boxes, okay? It doesn't really matter, all right? So I just wanted to show you how to quickly create this table. This happens to be a 3-column table so that things weren't bumped up against each other. I'm going to leave that space in the middle. But I wanted to talk to you about a recent application that my husband and I had, kind of our own personal curriculum that we're doing that we were doing for the spring, okay? So let's look at that. My husband and I have recently gotten into the sport of disc golf, okay? I first played, we called it frisbee golf back in the day. Back in 1979, 1980, I went to visit my sister at college, and they were having a frisbee golf weekend. And I had no idea what that was. But as it turns out, we stood on the steps of one building and we threw the frisbee across the quad, and we had a tree that had a ribbon around it, and that was our goal to go to. Okay, so we tried to go and get close to the tree, or lay the frisbee at the base of the tree, or whatever it happened to be. Okay, so that's where frisbee golf started for me. Frisbee golf has come a long way since 1980, and it's now called disc golf because Frisbee is a trademarked item, so you can't call it Frisbee golf anymore. But my husband loves to play games, and now that he's retired, one of the things that he picked up when we were cleaning out the garage was he found his bag of old discs that we used to use. Okay, so that got him to thinking about disc golf. This became a very organic learning process for my husband. He got the discs. We went to a local disc golf place. He threw the disc and said, "Yep, this is going to be fun. Let's do this again." We had a set of friends that we met and we said, "Hey, come with us, come play disc golf." And we played couples, against each other. My husband and I were on one team, and my friend and her husband were on another team. And we had a great time. Did we follow the rules? Probably not, because we weren't sure what the rules were. But it was a start for us. It was that vested interest, that creativity that we wanted to explore a little bit more, okay? Since then, my husband is becoming a disc golf fanatic. And we simply went through and kind of wrote down some things that we could start researching and learning about related to disc golf, okay? So, for example, under reading, there are all kinds of different articles on the different disc types. There are mid-range disc, and there are putting discs, and there are distance discs, and all of that kind of stuff. So, who knew, right? We just used to throw frisbees at trees. There are blogs about the game. There are rules, official rules, because there are tournaments where people win lots of big money. So there are official rules that we had to go back and read to make sure that we were playing correctly. There are proper ways to play doubles, so we had to read about that as well. And then as you look at different golf courses, disc golf courses around the country, there are reviews about them also that you can read, okay? Going on down, look at all the vocabulary words. Basket, tee, gift, disc, grip, fan grip, power grip, Heiser versus Anheuser. I always thought Anheuser was a beer. Who knew, right? Fairway, mid-range, driver, approach, putter, putting rings, upshots, OBs, which means out of bounds, fade, turn, glide, speed, all of these things that, I had no idea were part of disc golf. But these are all things that we have learned about over our last month or two of learning about disc golf. Going on down to speaking, they're announcing games or tournaments. It's very interesting to listen to the announcers talk about tournaments. And while we've been out playing, I've even been joking with my husband, making, okay, as Michael approaches the tee, he's chosen to use the, Innova such and such, but, just like I'm calling the game or something like that. Just playing, speaking, sharing what I have learned, all right? Viewing and listening, there are disc golf technique coaches on YouTube that do a great job. Some of them are very funny. Some of them are very serious, and, they teach you a lot. It's great to see what's out there, okay? Jumping back over here on the other side now, going to the other side of my brain for math, the distances, the feet from the tee to the basket, that's something that you have to know, and what the par is and how far you can throw, and, all of these distance things that are out there and measuring those distances. Then also the disc weights, because that has a lot to do with how fast they fly or how far they can fly. And they are usually listed in grams. So if you're not somebody who's into metrics, you may need to learn a little bit more about grams and that kind of thing as well, okay? Going on down, what the disc materials are made of and the different disc weights. And each disc has a set of 4 numbers on it. What do those numbers mean? So that's something else that we had to learn, so that as we started looking at what disc would be best to use for an appropriate hole, we have to understand what those numbers mean, because those numbers tell us how the discs are designed to work out on the course, okay? Now, one of the questions that I still have is, why do the baskets have chains? Every basket that I see has chains or ropes in it, and I guess my my instinct is that's to kind of catch the disc and hold on to it and let it fall down into the basket, because otherwise you might throw, straight through the basket. But that's a curious question for me. And then there is the concept of lift and drag, like on airplanes and airplane wings, and lift and drag and how that affects the discs and when you're throwing them. Okay. Again, who knew that the game had this much to learn? Then for social studies, the history of the sport, like I said, way back in the 80s when we first started playing, I don't think there was a whole lot of history. So this is a more recent game, but you can imagine, how interesting that history is going to be to learn about that sport. I have not delved into that yet, but I do have it written down here because that's something that I want to look up. Okay. And then when you think about the arts, I was amazed at all of the discs logos and how beautiful they are. Some of them are holographic and they have 3 and 4 printing layers that go onto them. You can get customized discs with, your wife's face or your dog's face or something like that. And the designs of all of the logos and stuff that are on them, it's just absolutely gorgeous. So if I were teaching, you can believe that one of the projects would be to design your own disc. What would you call it? What would the design look like? What colors would you use? All of that, to take that artistic part of your brain, apply it to what you already know now about disc golf, and create something beautiful. Okay? All right. So this is kind of a short overview of what it might look like to learn about a theme, something new. Okay, again, I'm taking a theme that I'm interested in because we found that bag of discs in the garage. We tried it out. Yes, I think this is something that we both could do together and have fun with, and then attach it to what we already know. Going back and remembering throwing those discs at that college campus from the steps of the library over to the tree, um, and how much fun that was, and really understanding what is out there. Since we've started researching this, we have discovered all kinds of things. The courses now are very, very detailed. They all have these kinds of sign markers that are there that tell you what the hole is and what the par is and what the distance is. And they show you a little map of what the hole looks like. And then on one of the courses, we found a sign underneath of that that said, track your own course and keep score on your phone. There's actually a UDisc app that people have created for locating these different courses and tracking your information, the game that you play, and all that kind of thing. It has gone so far that my husband found kind of an abandoned course near our house that he has decided that he wants to help map out and measure. So he's been going over there using this UDisc app and actually documenting from the tee to the hole, and this is what's here and what it looks like, and taking pictures and all of that kind of thing, trying to improve the community for other people who might want to play. So I think that's great. That is a great way of getting involved in and volunteering in something that you're interested in. I think that's really cool. It's interesting to me too that when you actually go to these places to play and you look at the actual cages, there are actually little markers, little arrows that point you in the right direction for where the next tee is so that you can get to the next hole. And, it's amazing. They have little flags along the side, usually a specific color, maybe white, and that designates the out of bounds area so that if it goes in there, just like if you're playing mini golf and you hit your ball into the water feature, you put it back on the course and you take a penalty for that. It's amazing. It's a really amazing thing, and it's really, really fun. I would encourage you, if you have not looked into disc golf, to kind of give it a try. Look at it, see if there's any courses in your area. It's really kind of fun. Or even just watch some of the YouTube videos that are online just to see what people can do. I am amazed at people's arm strength, that they can throw 400 feet, throw the disc 400 feet. I'm lucky if I make it 100 feet, okay? And I'm trying my best to get better, but I'm not sure that's going to happen. Anyway, so let me get off the subject of disc golf and back on the subject of curriculum development. If you are somebody who is wanting to learn something new, for example, we wanted to learn disc golf, go ahead and create a table for yourself. Think about all the aspects of a subject that you can study. Don't just limit it to one book or one, skill or something like that. Let it be organic. There's a concept in learning that is learn, test, learn, test, learn, test. Okay? And what that really means is as you learn something new, you apply it to what you already know and you test to see if that works, okay? So for example, when I said I was learning to throw the disc farther, all right? One of the things that they teach you is squaring up to what you're trying to do. So you're not facing where you're trying to throw, you kind of go to the side, okay? And you don't look at where you're trying to throw, you look this way so that you throw straight, okay? All right, so I'm trying that. Learn, test, learn, test, learn, test, to see if I can throw any farther. And I actually have been able to almost double the amount of distance that I can throw, right? Which is still not very much compared to what some of these other guys do. But that's okay. I'm not really competitive. I'm just really trying to improve what I'm able to do, okay? And by using a power grip instead of a fan grip, I have had a little bit more control over the discs as well. Those are two terms that I had no idea until I started learning about this, okay? So as you are learning about new things, document what you're learning, write it down, because remember, the process of writing things down really helps set those things in your mind. So you learn something, you write it down, you go and apply it and think about, is this working? What needs to be done? Usually when you answer one question in learning, you create other questions like, why are there chains in all of these baskets, okay? Or what does lift and drag have to do with these particular discs, okay? All right, so this is a quick and easy framework. If you're interested in curriculum development or more about how to learn or any of those kinds of things, as a teacher, I have a lot of information that I would be willing to share with you guys about some of the best ways to learn. If that's something that's interesting to you, leave me a comment that says, yes, more learning content. That would be fine. If you're here just for the OneNote stuff, that's okay too. You can tell me, stick to OneNote. I want to learn everything that's new and functional about OneNote. It doesn't matter to me. My joy is that I get to continue teaching, and that's really what I love doing. So I want to say thank you for joining me today. I hope you found this information useful. If you did, please go ahead, leave me a like, hit that thumbs up button, leave me a comment if you would like to. And until next time, here's hoping that you can live a more simplified and organized life through better planning. I use OneNote to track all the stuff that I learn about. Until next time, okay, bye.